There are some inventions that make us say, dude, why didn't I come up with this? And then you have the next question. Why don't we have it in my hometown yet? I'm talking about things like splash-proof toilets, liquid trees, and skyscrapers with slides. Yep, they're all pretty real, and you're about to fall in love with them. Have you ever used a public bathroom in the summer in your shorts and sandals and got splashed? It happens to the best of us, so no worries. If only there was some solution to this problem. Perhaps a urinal with a small hole so no liquid goes where it shouldn't. Looks pretty yucky and painful to me. An assistant professor at the University of Waterloo, Zhao Pen, and his colleagues came up with a way better solution for this sensitive issue. Their designs were inspired by physics and dogs. When a stream of liquid moves on a solid surface at a shallow angle, the splash is reduced, and the smaller the angle, the fewer splashes you'll see. You can even minimize them to a zero. And when dogs do their business, they lift their hind legs and do it on the vertical surface of a tree or a wall. I don't know if they actually care about it, but this does reduce the splash. Good job, Pluto! The team invented several models and presented them at the American Physical Society conference, and it was a hit. The inventors say that all of the models are no splash, but their favorites are the slice of apple and the one that looks like a tall and slender J with a narrow and long opening. The new urinals aren't just super cool, but also more sustainable. You won't have to wash the floor with water, chemicals, and human energy after every use, which is a win-win. Here's another innovative public toilet idea for you, this time from Japan. They have completely transparent walls, which means, yes, you can see everything that's going on inside, from the toilet itself to the hand wash sink. It sounds pretty creepy, but the idea was actually to create a safe restroom in the park. Visitors can see if there's someone hiding inside before entering, and also check if the toilet is clean before entering. When you go inside and lock the door, the walls change color to opaque, and no one will be able to see you. They used glass covered with PDLC film to make the walls, which allowed them to go from being transparent to safely intense using electricity. Alright, now you've nearly convinced me to try one of those magical toilets. Oh, and they also double as excellent lanterns in the dark, shining bright in different colors. Bring a couple to my local park, I don't mind. Take a deep breath. If you don't like what you're breathing in, do something about it. That must have been exactly what the smart guys at the University of Belgrade, Serbia thought and invented the liquid tree. The liquid 3, not the pun and laugh a bit, consists of a glass tank filled with over 150 gallons of water, some microalgae, and a solar panel which provides electricity to a small pump. The microalgae need heating, so just in case there's no sun and the temperatures drop, the photobioreactor is also connected to the city grid. Microalgae work hard to do some photosynthesis magic and convert water and CO2 into oxygen, and then it goes into the atmosphere. The liquid tree also comes with a bench to sit on and enjoy its work. The liquid 3 needs more work than a regular tree in the park. They need to replace the water and microalgae almost completely every month and a half. And they also need to take out the biomass that is the byproduct of the process, and let's admit, nothing can replace those blooming babes in spring. If you ever find yourself casually wandering in the forests of Estonia, don't freak out if you see some giant megaphones. These wooden acoustic giants were set 3 hours away from the country's capital by interior architecture students. That's way cooler than the hamster roller coaster I once built for a science fair, I have to admit. More than half of Estonia is covered by woods, and they're pretty proud of this natural wealth. So it's not the first art project of this kind, and there was a winding, elevated pathway and a faceted woodland cabin. The idea of the megaphones is to crank up the natural sounds of a forest and also to serve as a rest spot for hikers. These wooden beauties are large enough to host several people. And hey, if you walk this far into the woodland, you'll be thankful for this. The students were given a task to invent some concepts of a forest library. They built the megaphones off-site and brought them to their permanent spots. They're set in such a way that sounds from 3 directions meet in the center and create a cool, natural surround sound effect. Have you ever helped your friends move into a new apartment in a building without an elevator? Then you're gonna love this one. Houses in Amsterdam have hooks on top. This is a medieval invention for pulling stuff up the houses. The simple tech consisting of a wheel and a rope still functions now, centuries later. Why not just use the stairs? Well, if you get inside one of those narrow Amsterdam buildings, you'll see there's hardly enough room to comfortably ascend, and you can forget about even trying to pull a table on top. Back in the medieval ages, pretty much like now, only rich people could afford housing around the canals in the best parts of the city. Those people were mostly traders and used the canals for their business. They stored goods in the same houses they lived in, and with regular floods, they had to find a way to keep the goods dry. And that's why they needed to invent something to lift furniture, goods, boxes, instruments, and food on the upper floors, and pull it in through fully open, wide windows. The lifting tech is one of the reasons the houses in Amsterdam are leaning forward. This position helped keep both the lifted stuff and the walls and windows safe during transportation. They didn't have to touch each other. The gables also assisted in the process and had to be made firm to withstand all the heavy weight. And in case you're wondering what gables are, they're sections of wall between the edges of a dual-pitched roof, typical for Amsterdam. Folks who live or work in skyscrapers have the opposite problem. Getting out of the building can take a while as you wait in line for the elevator. A slide going from the top of a skyscraper could be a solution. In 2016, they added one outside of the US Bank Tower in Los Angeles at the height of 1,000 feet. The see-through slide, made of glass just 1 inch thick, was built to withstand hurricane-force winds and earthquakes. It was built to bring tourists to the building, though not for the convenience of office workers. And then they decided it wasn't such a great idea, so the slide was removed as part of the reconstruction of the building. A Hong Kong photographer and editor who became famous online went even wilder with his imagination and designed a double-decker bus with a slide. It's not his only futuristic photography masterpiece, as he likes to play with perspective and proportions. I can totally see myself sliding away when someone asks me to pay for the ride. What you're viewing is recognized as the most densely populated location to have ever existed. It spans just 6.4 acres, which is equivalent to 13 Starbucks coffee shops located in the Empire State Building. And while a huge coffee shop like this one can host, say, 1,000 guests, this place somehow managed to have around 33,000 people squeezed in. Some estimates suggest that the actual number could have soared to 50,000 at some point. This is Kowloon Walled City. The city is relatively young, settled in 1898, but its history goes back nearly 1,000 years to the Song Dynasty. Originally a modest fortification, it remained largely unchanged until renovations in 1847 added defensive walls, leading to its revival a half-century later. But back then, the area was sparsely populated rather than crowded. To really understand just how packed this area got by the mid-20th century, let's compare it to some others. Take the East Village in New York City, for example. It has a little park at its center, but mostly it's filled with a mix of historic homes and newer apartment buildings. As of 2010, it was home to over 44,000 people, making it way more crowded than the rest of New York City, which is saying a lot, since New York City is the most densely populated city in the US. By most standards, it's pretty busy. But then you look at Kowloon Walled City, and it's a whole different ballgame. If all the land there could be split proportionally between the residents, that would be somewhere around 5.5 to 8.5 square feet per person, if we count land only. While science claims people need 200 to 400 square feet at home just to feel good. So, Why was everything crammed together like that? Well, it comes down to Kowloon Walled City's unique status. It was never officially part of the rest of Hong Kong. What started as a small Chinese military outpost became more significant when a larger fort was built nearby, coinciding with the rise of Canton Harbor. After the fall of the Qing dynasty, this site transformed into a tourist destination, eventually becoming home to around 400 squatters. However, in the 1930s, the Hong Kong authorities intervened, relocating the inhabitants and demolishing the dilapidated structures. The 1940s and 50s were pretty rough times for folks in Kowloon. And while the residents were somewhat accustomed to different countries vying for control over their land, they were definitely caught off guard by natural disasters. In January 1950, a massive fire broke out that wiped over 2,500 huts, leaving almost 3,500 families, which is about 17,000 people without homes. This disaster really underscored the need for better fire safety measures, especially in the squatter areas made mainly of wood. The problem didn't end there. Due to the lack of control from both the Chinese and British authorities, except for a handful of operations conducted by the Hong Kong police, the walled city became a refuge for illegal activities. It was not until a trial in 1959, which took place within the walled city's boundaries, that the Hong Kong government was officially recognized as having jurisdiction there. By that time, however, organized crime groups known as triads had already established dominance over the area. Starting in the 1950s, triad factions such as the 14K and Sun Yee-un took control of all the criminal dens within the walled city. The environment became so dangerous that police would only enter in large numbers. It wasn't until 1973 and 1974 when over 3,500 police operations led to more than 2,500 arrests and the confiscation of illegal produce that the influence of the triads began to diminish. Only a decade later, the local police chief announced that the crime rate in the walled city was now under control. And even though crime dropped, the walled city still became known for having a surprising number of unlicensed doctors and dentists who could work there without fear of getting into trouble. That was a win-win. Many working-class people couldn't afford licensed dentists somewhere in Hong Kong, so they would go to Kowloon to receive affordable health care. You get it now. What can attract people in such a seedy place? Right, it's zero oversight. And zero oversight means that anyone could start their business here, no matter how shady it was. However, there were some totally normal entrepreneurs. For example, noodle makers. Despite all the dangers, the population of the city kept growing. But how can you create more houses if your territory is very limited? Simple. Think vertically, not horizontally. So, local developers started stacking more and more stories, as if those were Lego bricks you could easily add on top of your tower. This led to a crazy population boom, making the city feel like a little world of its own, with over 33,000 people being crammed into 300 buildings on just about 7 acres. By the late 70s and early 80s, the city hit its peak size. But that came with some quirks. However, there were limits on how tall buildings could go. Those could not exceed 13 to 14 stories, and it was because of planes flying into Kai Tak Airport. Yeah, living close to the airport meant residents had to deal with a lot of noise. Water was provided through 8 municipal pipes, although there were options for wells too. Some streets barely saw any natural light thanks to the way buildings were packed in, and fluorescent lights were the go-to for illumination down below. It was nighttime all the time in there. So, the city buildings were pretty tall, Yet the city had merely 2 elevators for its entirety. At the base of various skyscrapers, both shared and private mailboxes were affixed to the walls. Frequently, this left the postman with no choice but to ascend on foot. Even several floors high, the tangled network of paths persisted, intricate passages that wound their way into the city's core through a web of bridges and staircases. But let's say you live in such a place and want to have a walk or just a bit of fresh air. What do? In such cramped conditions, rooftops will serve you 1,000 purposes. They can be a space for physical activities and a kid's playground, but they can also be used as venues for pigeon racing, with residents making their guess concerning which pigeon comes first. And it's illegal for sure. Such rooftops can pose certain risks because of the narrow spaces between the buildings. But locals use them also as landfills. The absence of efficient garbage collection led to some residents to transport their larger waste items up to the roof. Consequently, many rooftops became crowded with abandoned mattresses, damaged furniture, and appliances. Hey, I get the feeling that I'm talking about something that actually exists. Sorry for that, I totally forgot to mention the most important thing. This city ceased its existence back in the 1990s. What happened? Long story short, both Chinese and British authorities grew increasingly weary of the chaos unfolding in the city. Control was difficult, if not impossible. Criminals kept proliferating and the area was in disarray. Consequently, officials from both countries chipped in and allocated approximately $350 million in compensation for the locals, who had been kicked out of that area as the city was demolished. Kowloon exists today, but not as the infamous walled city. It's now an urban area in Hong Kong, which is located in a completely different place. It just has the same name. As for the area that used to be Kowloon, there's now a park known as Kowloon Walled City Park. Architects and thinkers still look back at Kowloon as a prime example of the organic megastructure concept from the 60s, which envisions cities as flexible networks that grow and change with their residents. Almost forgot. If you're looking to catch a glimpse of the real deal, you should watch Crime Story, starring Jackie Chan, as some scenes were filmed there.
So, you're walking along a wide street of a huge megacity and feel as if you've suddenly been transported into a post-apocalyptic movie. Everything around is eerily quiet. The high-rise buildings surrounding you look new but deserted. There are no cars and no people. Has doomsday taken them all? Those might be your thoughts if you visited Ordos Kambashi, a new city in China's Inner Mongolia a few years ago. The place rose in a desert rapidly in less than a decade. It has wonderful architecture, lots of public spaces, and rows upon rows of fresh new houses. But the place didn't get famous because of it all. Instead, the city became known for something it didn't have: people. The media started calling it a ghost town. They claimed it was empty, with no businesses or life. Well, I've got so many questions here, and the main one is, why didn't people want to live there? Now there's a curious twist to this story. The thing is, news stories, which describe Ordos Kambashi as a ghost town and generally a failure, began in 2009. Some reporters visited the place and figured out that not so many people lived there. At that time, the city indeed looked like a megalopolis after a terrible disaster. But the problem was, the reporters didn't ask local officials why the city was so empty, and they missed a key point. By that time, the city had only been under construction for 6 years. It hadn't even been finished yet. True, there weren't many people living there when they called the place a ghost city, but the reporters didn't know the full story and exaggerated the facts to impress readers. You want to know the real story? Ordos wasn't a ghost town built for nobody. It was just a city still in the making. The city's original plan was to build a comfortable place for 1 million people by 2023. But some unpleasant changes in the coal market occurred. Sadly, it was Ordos's main source of income. so the plan was scaled down to about 300,000 people. In its first 5 years, Ordos Kambashi got a whole downtown with offices, a world-class museum, and an opera house. It even had a cool library. It was shaped like books standing on a shelf. But even though the place already looked like a city, in reality, it was still under construction. It wasn't a ghost town. It was more like a construction site. Early on, nobody lived in Ordos Kambashi full-time since there weren't enough schools, hospitals, and shops. People went there to work and then returned to their hometowns at the end of the day. It took a few more years to build these facilities, so no wonder that, at first, the population of the city was small. Ordos isn't a true ghost town these days, just as our next destination. We're traveling all the way to Africa to a massive new residential area, Nova Cidade de Colomba. You can find it 18 miles away from Angola's capital, Luanda. The city has 750 apartment buildings, more than a dozen schools, and over 100 retail spaces. The project cost $3.5 billion, more than I make in a year, and was supposed to house up to 500,000 people. They used to show Colomba in glossy promotional videos. In those mini-movies, happy families lived far from the crowded, chaotic districts of Luanda. But there was a catch. The people in the videos were not real residents, they were actors. Because nearly a year after the first 2,800 apartments had gone on sale, only 220 were sold. If you had come to visit Colomba in the first years of its existence, it would have been eerily quiet. You would have seen the rows of colorful apartment buildings standing empty, closed shutters, deserted balconies. There would have been barely any cars and hardly anyone around. Most of the shops would have been vacant, except for the hypermarket at the entrance. Even if people had lived there would have been nowhere to buy basic things, like food. There's no mystery here. Apartments in Colombo were priced between $120,000 and $200,000, and that was way far beyond the reach of most Angolans. 2/3 of them live on less than $2 a day. It was also incredibly difficult to get a bank loan. Even with new laws designed to help people get mortgages, many Angolans couldn't afford the down payments, even those with decent-paying jobs. Luckily, sometime later, prices of the smallest units were reduced from $125,000 to $70,000. As a result, the population increased to 80,000 residents by July 2015. In 2019, the population was already 129,000. As for 2024, Colomba has become a desired destination for middle-class Angolans. Meanwhile, it's time to visit the next place on our list of post-apocalyptic megacities. Imagine walking down cobblestone streets with lines of charming old-style homes on each side. You pass Edwardian houses and Victorian terraces. Oh look, a fish and chip shop over there, and iconic red phone boxes. It looks like a scene straight out of England. But here's the twist. You're only 40 minutes away from downtown Shanghai. Huh? The thing is, Shanghai tried to give its residents a taste of the world. And back in 2001, they started an ambitious project called One City, 9 Towns. The idea was to relieve terrible overcrowding in the city by building 9 suburban communities. Each of them was designed to look like a different Western country. One of those is Thames Town, a little slice of England. Over $330 million was spent creating this mini England from scratch. They even imported actual lampposts from the UK and built a replica of a famous Gothic church from Bristol. But it wasn't just about England. Other towns were inspired by Germany, Spain, the Netherlands, and even Canada. So, what happened? Well, the houses in Thames Town sold fast, but most of the middle-class people they were meant for couldn't afford them. Instead, wealthy buyers swooped in, getting them as investments or second homes. And now Thames Town and most of the other 9 towns remain empty. The area has turned into a ghost town, with beautiful houses and shops, but no one to live there. Our next destination isn't too far away. Welcome to one of the strangest capital cities in the world, Naypyidaw. Now, imagine a city built from scratch right in the middle of rice paddies and sugarcane fields. In 2005, Myanmar showed the world its brand new capital, named Naypyidaw, which means the seat of the king. The rumor has it, The city cost up to $4 billion to build. This surreal city is 6 times the size of New York City. Everything there is supersized. Roads have up to 20 lanes and stretch as far as the eye can see. There's a safari park and at least 2 golf courses. Unlike in the rest of the country, there's reliable electricity there, and many restaurants have free fast Wi-Fi. But there's one big issue: the place is weirdly empty. It even got international attention because of its odd layout and ghost town vibe. If you look closer, though, you might spot pairs of street cleaners in neon green vests. They're walking up and down those roads, sweeping streets that are already spotless. But what's the point if no one wants to live there? People say it's boring, expensive, and has no infrastructure for life. The whole place feels like an extreme test of if you build it, they will come. The test the city seems to have failed. Let's fly back to the USA now. There, in Pennsylvania, you'll see a town on fire. It's Centralia, a near ghost town. Since 1962, a coal fire has been burning underneath this small town and is likely to keep burning for the next 250 years. It all started with an attempt to clean up the local landfill. It accidentally ignited the coal seams underground. Over the years, people abandoned their homes as the fire created dangerous sinkholes and filled the air with poisonous gas, such as carbon monoxide. In 1992, the state had taken over most of the land, leaving just a handful of residents. They agreed to give up their property when they passed away. Centralia was doomed, and the fire is still burning beneath its empty streets. So, tell me, which of the ghost cities would you like to visit? Tell us in the comments.
You have about $130 million. What would you do with it? Fly into space or buy an island? There are many ways you can spend this much money, but one anonymous investor used it to build an extravagant underwater city. The project is not finished yet, and a lot of people are currently working really hard to make this crazy idea come to life. If all goes well, in the near future, living under the sea may become a reality. In the past century, there was a limestone quarry near the Welsh border in England. In the 1990s, it became flooded and turned into a lake 260 feet deep. Now, there's a large construction project going on around it. Trucks transport materials and people in overalls construct huge modules that look like giant futuristic submarines. These modules are called Sentinels, and they will become the buildings of a small underwater city. Builders and engineers create durable stainless steel materials that allow these houses to withstand a depth of up to 650 feet. This is the upper limit of the twilight zone, where very little sunlight penetrates. Large squid and other creatures live in this zone. Imagine waking up in an underwater hotel room and seeing a giant squid staring at you from the dark. Or even worse, you see a huge eye watching you as you wake up. This could happen if Sentinels were successfully installed in the depths of the ocean. Meanwhile, let's return to our project on a small lake. The project is called Deep. Its goal is to make life underwater as comfortable as possible. Inside living modules, builders install bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, and observation windows. People will access them using small submarines. However, it's not as simple as calling a taxi. To live underwater, you need to train under the guidance of experienced instructors to test yourself in underwater life simulators. The cost of living there will likely be expensive, but it's worth it. At least you will be well fed. A chef will develop a special menu, and all food will be stored in vacuum-sealed bags to preserve its flavor and nutrients. It all sounds great, but there's a question. Who is financing this project? No one knows the answer. Deep is funded by a secret investor who has already spent more than $100 million. Interestingly, this is not the first attempt to create an underwater dwelling. For example, Jacques-Yves Cousteau, a famous diver explorer, first created the Conshelf 1 underwater house in 1962. This was a steel cylinder located at a depth of 30 feet, where 2 divers lived for a week. In 1970, several women also spent 14 days underwater in the Caribbean Sea at a depth of 50 feet. The aim of that project was to study human psychology in a cramped environment, similar to that of a spaceship. Unsurprisingly, that project was partly funded by NASA. Okay, we have windows overlooking marine life, delicious food, underwater parties, and solitude away from civilization. All these things sound cool, but if we put aside the fun part for a moment, is there any real benefit to it? Oh yeah, ocean exploration. Many marine biologists believe that the best way to explore the ocean is from within. Diving doesn't help much since divers are limited by time and body needs. They can stay underwater for only about an hour and a half at a time. Underwater cities could allow us to live underwater for months. But the most important thing is long-term observation of marine life in its natural habitat. In the mid-1990s, a group of researchers wanted to study the development and nutrition of corals. They brought them to the lab for testing and found out that corals reacted differently to tests in artificial environments than in the ocean. Their behavior in a laboratory setting was different from their behavior in the wild. Underwater cities could also provide work for archaeologists who study the remains of ships that have sunk throughout history. Plus, such cities could help protect us from future disasters. In the event of a catastrophe like an earthquake, tsunami, or volcanic eruption, scientists and engineers could build water-based shelters like the Sub-Biosphere 2 project to provide refuge for people. These circular structures could sink into the ocean and give shelter for up to 50 or 100 people, allowing them to wait out the disaster from a safe distance. Underwater cities could be an excellent solution to overpopulation, but there are some downsides. We already pollute the world's oceans, and what if we literally lived inside them? It's one thing to use labs to study marine life, but it's another to build hotels for vacationers. One such hotel, called the Water Discus, is a building at a depth of no more than 32 feet. It will have 21 rooms and a restaurant with coral reef views. While the conditions seem comfortable, some experts worry that staying there for long periods could be harmful because of the lack of sunlight. Nevertheless, it would be interesting to stay there for a week and see how it feels. The most challenging aspect of creating such laboratories, hotels, and bunkers is ensuring a reliable life support and safety system. It's crucial that the air, humidity, and temperature be as comfortable as possible for people to live in these structures. However, this requires a significant amount of energy. Currently, all modern underwater buildings rely on external sources of energy located on the surface. But scientists plan to make future underwater projects fully autonomous, using kinetic energy from waves and powerful solar panels to generate power. It's also important to create the right structure for these buildings. Rather than covering an underwater city with a giant bubble, it's more efficient to create several large housing modules. Each module should consist of steel, glass, and special cement. Also, the depth shouldn't exceed 1,000 feet, since a deeper location would require thicker walls because of high water pressure. To load and move these residential modules safely, engineers can use ballast tanks. These are large containers filled with water, which are used to pull the modules down deep into the ocean. Once in place, engineers can release the water from the tanks and fill them with air, causing the house to float back to the surface. And what about fresh air? Fish extract oxygen from the water using their gills, but this method is obviously not suitable for humans. Therefore, we need to deliver air from the surface. It can be piped into the city and mixed with a special substance called sodasorb, which reacts with carbon dioxide and removes it. It would be great if we could generate oxygen inside our underwater cities rather than relying on other sources. This would require farms and plants that can produce oxygen through photosynthesis. But instead of sunlight, these plants would use artificial light. If we talk about complete autonomy, people could get food from the water at any moment, put on scuba gear, a mask, and an oxygen tank, and leave the hotel through an airlock. Use harpoons and fishing nets to catch dinner. Remember to check your oxygen reserves and don't swim for too long. Frying fish in a pan won't work because of strong odors. In an underwater dwelling, Air is static like in an airplane cabin, so odors become stronger. Maybe in the future, engineers will create a dedicated cooking area, but for now, you'll have to rely on canned and dehydrated food. If you get bored, go for an underwater walk. Instead of carrying oxygen tanks, use hollow tubes connecting your mask to an air source inside your home. But don't forget that you can't go too far because the length of the tube is limited. Air, food, safe construction. What else? Drinking water. In the future, scientists may create filters in these hotels that desalinate salt water. This water can be extracted from the condensation inside the hotel, as well as from human secretions. Don't be surprised. Astronauts, for example, have been using special technology to filter their liquids and turn them into drinking water for a long time. You're standing in the middle of a vast, empty desert in Saudi Arabia. But in the middle of that emptiness, two enormous mirrored skyscrapers rise side by side, in perfect parallel to each other. This isn't just some sci-fi concept, it's the Line, the centerpiece of Saudi Arabia's boldest urban project yet. Now, Saudi Arabia is already home to some of the most ambitious architecture in the world, from Riyadh's King Abdullah Financial District to the iconic Abraj Al Bayt Towers in Mecca. They've been working hard for years. But the Line is in a league of its own. This project was announced in 2021, and it is part of a larger vision for the country's future called NEOM, a $500 billion mega project designed to redefine how people live, work, and interact with the environment. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Well, I don't know, but Nadmi Al Nasser, the longtime chief executive of the ambitious project, has recently departed. Suspicious. Even more so because NEOM's statement issued soon after did not give any plausible reason for his departure. Then, the Line project itself was originally expected to cost around $200 billion. But by 2024, that number had skyrocketed to a mind-blowing $2 trillion. That's about twice Saudi Arabia's entire GDP. And if you ask independent experts, they think it could end up costing even more. At first, the plan was to build about 10 miles of the project and have 1.5 million people living there by 2030. By now, the expectations are way more modest. Only just under 1.5 miles are likely to be done by 2030, with fewer than 300,000 residents. The project has come across a lot of problems along the way. Engineering issues and management problems have caused major delays, and progress hasn't been as fast as hoped. And now, let's figure out what exactly is the Line. It's a literal city made up of two parallel skyscrapers, each towering 1,640 feet high. That's higher than almost all the tallest skyscrapers in the world. These skyscrapers are 656 feet wide and stretch for a mind-boggling 106 miles across the northwest of Saudi Arabia, right near the Red Sea. The most astounding thing? The entire city is actually within this one structure. There are no cars, no roads, no emissions. But we'll go into detail a bit later. The complex is supposed to house 9 million people, and all of this running entirely on clean energy. Such a project aligns perfectly with Saudi Arabia's ambitious Vision 2030 plan. The outside of the skyscrapers will be covered in mirrors that will reflect the surrounding desert landscape, creating an almost seamless blend between the city and its surroundings. Inside, there will be lush parks, cascading waterfalls, flying taxis, and even robot helpers to take care of everyday tasks. They're also planning to make an artificial moon as part of the city's design. One more thing that makes the Line so unique is its design. Unlike traditional cities that spread out horizontally, the Line is vertical. Everything, homes, offices, parks, schools, shopping centers, are stacked on top of each other in layers. This means that residents won't need to travel long distances to get what they need. In fact, the designers promise that all amenities will be within a 5-minute walk from anywhere in the city. And while it's compact in width, The city's vertically layered structure means it can comfortably fit all 9 million residents, while leaving plenty of room for parks, natural spaces, and modern conveniences. There's even a plan for year-round climate control, keeping both indoor and outdoor spaces at comfortable temperatures, no matter how harsh the desert weather gets. Of course, even with everything close by, people will still need to get around the city. Worry not. The line has it covered in the most futuristic way possible. It features a high-speed train system that will travel from one end of the city to the other in just 20 minutes. That's 106 miles in 20 minutes with only 4 stops along the way. Imagine being able to get anywhere in the city faster than you could drive across town in most places today. Besides the train, the line will also have autonomous vehicles. Those will be cars and shuttles driving themselves with the help of advanced technology. They will handle everything from parking to going around obstacles. Even cooler, in the line, every car, train, and any other piece of infrastructure will be connected in a huge network called the Internet of Things. Sensors and real-time data will allow traffic to flow smoothly, preventing delays and reducing congestion. They first spoke about the NEOM project in 2017. Besides the line, NEOM is supposed to include an octagon-shaped floating industrial city and a posh mountain ski resort. There, Saudi Arabia will host the Asian Winter Games in 2029. Plus, there will be the world's largest green energy plant, which will make the region self-sufficient and sustainable. The goal of NEOM is to attract people from around the world, not just to visit, but to live there. Residents will even be given their own identity, Neomians. Not everyone thinks this construction is a good idea. Some urban planners and architects have pointed out pretty big flaws in the city's straight-line layout. You see, in a regular city like Johannesburg, which covers way more ground than the line, 2 random people are usually only about 20 miles apart. But in the line, the average distance between 2 random people would be 35 miles. That's almost double, even though the line's overall area is way smaller. This setup could make it harder for people to connect socially and might be a pain to navigate, even with a high-speed train zipping through it. Now, they promise that every resident will have everything they need within a 5-minute walk, but there are doubts too. People wonder if living in a super compact, stacked-up design might end up feeling claustrophobic or even too much to handle. As for the whole mirrored exterior idea, it looks pretty cool in renderings. But there's an opinion it could actually mess with the environment. Reflecting all that sunlight in a desert might disturb local wildlife or create unexpected heat issues. The line's high-tech features sound amazing, but they come with their own set of headaches. The city is supposed to run on the Internet of Things tech and autonomous vehicles. Sounds awesome, right? But how are they going to pull that off for a 106-mile-long city? For things to run smoothly, every piece of tech, cars, trains, infrastructure, needs to be perfectly in sync, sharing tons of real-time data. If there's even a tiny glitch, it could throw a wrench into daily life for millions of people. Then there's that high-speed train. It does sound like a dream, but actually building and keeping it running in the middle of a desert is not so easy. The heat, shifting sands, and wear and tear on the tracks could cause big delays and rack up costs pretty quickly. People around the world are questioning if the line is even doable. The first inhabitants were supposed to start living there by 2030, but there are reports about scaling the project back, so that deadline feels like a big stretch. There's also a sustainability issue. The line is supposed to have 0 emissions and 100% clean energy. But building something so massive is bound to take tons of resources. With all these challenges, Saudi Arabia is looking into new ways to fund the line and figure out which parts of their Vision 2030 projects to prioritize. An insider has recently said that some projects might go ahead as planned, while others could be delayed or scaled down. This lines up with what Ali Shahabi, who's on NEOM's advisory board, has said. He admitted that the Vision 2030 goals were always meant to be super ambitious. Like, almost too ambitious. but he argued that even if they only pull off part of it in time, it'll still be a big deal. The Museum of Bad Art, or MOBA in short, used to be located in an old basement in Dedham, Massachusetts. And currently, you can find it in Somerville, Massachusetts. It only accepts art pieces that are so bad you just can't ignore them. Their collection includes portraits. Get it? That's the name they use for portraits. And some really outrageous landscapes. There's also the MOBA Zoo, featuring really unfortunate depictions of our furry friends. Like any self-respecting museum, they also have a gift shop where you can purchase some prints, postcards, or even a coffee mug with your favorite bad art. Speaking of really unique experiences, how would you like to spend time in jail without actually having to break the law? In Scotland, there's a place called Inverary Jail. It's an actual former prison that dates back to the 1800s, where tourists can experience 19th century jail life. There are characters dressed in authentic costumes that make it even more realistic. You can participate in courtroom trials and work with other inmates. In Suwon, South Korea, visitors can check out a theme park built around the history and culture of toilets. It was opened in memory of the former city mayor. He dedicated a lot of time and local resources to improving the city's public toilets and sewer system. It goes without saying that this place has a lot of toilet-themed art documenting the world's restroom culture. You'll find everything here, from men's and women's bathroom signs from around the globe to photographs of public toilets, and information about the importance of sanitary facilities. A designer store in the middle of the desert? If you happen to pass by Texas, you'll find a Prada store on an empty stretch of US 90 outside of the small town of Valentine, about 150 miles from El Paso. Two Berlin artists wanted to offer Texans the high-end experience, sort of. That's because the Curious store has no door to access it, and its 20 left-foot shoes and 6 purses set on display. Surprisingly, the store was built with the blessing of Miuccia Prada herself, the head designer of the brand. Can you imagine living in a city where you have your own beach access to a lagoon that leads directly into the sea? That might be possible in the near future, if you don't mind relocating to Sabah Al Ahmad Sea City in Kiran, Kuwait. This engineering masterpiece was inaugurated in 2016. Its canals form 120 miles of artificial shoreline. All those human-made islands were built by excavating large channels in the desert rather than using reclaimed land, as was done previously in similar conditions. Before visiting this museum, you have to take off the shoes you've been wearing and put on special slippers that won't damage the artwork, because it's everywhere. It's called the Electric Ladyland, and it's the world's first museum of fluorescent art. The owner, Nick Palladino, exhibits here a lot of his own sculptures and even naturally luminescent rocks, along with other human-made glowing objects. One portion of this art gallery features paintings that shift color under UV light. The soundtrack is awesome too. You'll hear a lot of the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix. Upside-down houses seem to be quite a tourist attraction. You can find them in many countries, such as Japan, Poland, Germany, and Austria. One of the best ones to visit is located in Malaysia. It's called Rumah Terbalik Upside Down House. It uses recycled wood and other natural materials to recreate a local atmosphere. It was opened back in 2012 and soon became a popular tourist attraction with its upside-down furniture and wacky household appliances. There's even an upside-down car parked in the garage. A spa-themed park located in Hakone, Japan, provides tourists with an interesting array of hot springs. Some of them are quite unusual, especially the unique noodle bar, where visitors can literally swim in a bowl of ramen. It's not for tasting though, since it's still a public space. The Dead Marsh in Namibia offers a cool experience which makes you think you're frozen in time. Since there's no water here and temperatures are really high, this sparse forest is made out of skeleton trees that haven't been alive for more than 600 years. Since there's little to no humidity, the remaining vegetation cannot fall apart,
leaving behind this odd natural landscape. It even became the set for some sci-fi movies. Spoiler alert! But the paper house located north of Boston, Massachusetts is actually a house made completely out of paper, furniture and all. It was built by Ellis F. Stenman, the man behind the machine that makes paper clips. Back in the 1920s, he basically wanted a 2-room summer home for him and his family. It took him over 20 years to complete, since the house was made of about 100,000 newspapers. Just make sure you don't bring any lighters. Cappadocia Cave Hotel in Turkey is a great place to stay for both history buffs and people who are into modern and luxurious decor. All of the rooms and suites are located inside the local cave dwellings dating back to the Roman and Byzantine periods. Cappadocia is also famous for its hot air balloon tours. One of the reasons is because it's not very windy here and the view of the city is really beautiful, especially during sunset. The small Indian town of Deshnok certainly wouldn't be on your vacation list if you don't like rats. A 14th century legend has it that the rats living here are to be protected and nurtured. Over 20,000 rats live inside this famous location these days. Since they've been living there for so long, the rats are quite friendly with both locals and tourists. The Battle of the Oranges is a local festival happening each year in late February in a small Italian town of Ivrea. The local myth has it that the Carnaval de Ivrea started back in the Middle Ages. That's when locals stood against a hated ruler by throwing oranges at him in protest. It sounds like fun to join thousands of participants gathering there for 3 days to throw some oranges. Just don't forget to duck. Socotra Island in Yemen was separated from mainland Africa more than 6 million years ago. That's probably one of the reasons why this secluded island looks more like the set of a fantasy movie than a real location. The island has some incredible and unique flora. Most of the plants and trees that grow here are not found anywhere else in the world. Like, for example, the ancient twisted dragon's blood tree or the bulbous bottle tree. Japan's Tashirojima is rightly nicknamed Cat Island, since it has a population of 100,000 humans and almost 4 times as many felines. The cats were initially brought here since the island produced a lot of silk, and mice like silkworms a lot. More so, the cats were seen as a sign of good luck. There are even cat-shaped cabins for tourists to settle in, and it probably goes without saying that dogs aren't allowed there. There are about 1,700 weirdly shaped hills in the middle of Bohol Island in the Philippines. They're so unique that you might easily mistake them for human-made. They are, however, part of the UNESCO heritage, since they are naturally made out of coral deposits and shaped by rainwater erosion. Because of their quirky look, they earned the nickname of Chocolate Hills, since during the dry season, their exterior goes from lush green to brown. Big fan of cascading pools? Then make sure to check out another UNESCO World Heritage Site located in Pamukkale, Turkey. The name means Cotton Castle in Turkish. It's set in the ancient ruins of Hierapolis, a city that was built around the pools. Their crystal clear waters cascade from natural springs down to white travertine terraces. The view is so beautiful that you won't know what to do at first. Take a picture or jump in.
Back in the 12th and 13th centuries, Bologna used to look like modern-day Manhattan. No one knows exactly how many towers resembling skyscrapers it used to have, but the most likely number is at least 100. The tallest of them was around the same height as Big Ben. When the towers were built, Bologna was one of the largest cities in Europe. Construction projects were massive and ambitious. Someone built cathedrals and town halls, and the richest noble families also erected towers, possibly as a symbol of status and wealth. There was no place in the city center to build grand castles, so they had to go up with the construction. They didn't actually live in those towers, but in smaller structures next to them. The towers served for defensive purposes. It took between 3 and 10 years of work to build one tower, and it was a really tedious process. Each of them had a steady foundation deep underground and a base made of big blocks of selenite stone. The rest of the tower was becoming thinner and lighter the higher it went. In the 13th century, they demolished many of the towers, and others just collapsed by themselves. Some of them were later reused as city towers, shops, or residential buildings. Now you can see only 22 towers still standing in the center of Bologna. 2 of them have become the unofficial symbol of the city, mentioned in every guidebook. Another historical surprise coming from Italy is that gladiators weren't only male. Gladiatrix were rare, but they did exist. There's evidence that several women took part in Rome's public games. In ancient texts, these women were often called ludia, or mulieres, but not ladies. Some scholars think it means that it was mostly lower-class women in the arena. The term gladiatrix wasn't used in ancient times. It was first coined in the 1800s. Women who chose to become gladiators seemed to do so for independence, fame, financial rewards, and probably debt remission. They were most likely honored like male gladiators. All this was a bit tricky to accept in Roman society at that time, and women's roles in it. At the beginning of the current era, the Roman Senate passed a law prohibiting free-born women under 20 from taking part in arena games. Emperor Septimus Severus banned all women from the arena in the year 200 of the current era. He was probably afraid that women might want to compete in the Olympic Games. It would seriously mess up the existing social order. Pineapples were once the equivalent of designer bags and watches today, a symbol of wealth and status in Britain. You can still see them at the top of the western towers of St. Paul's Cathedral, one of the most famous landmarks of London. Explorers who came back from the Americas described pineapples with so much enthusiasm that everyone was dreaming about trying the king of fruits, as it was called. Pineapples need very high temperatures and years to mature. And despite the cold and rainy climate of England and Scotland, you could see pineapples growing in any wealthy country house garden by the end of the 18th century. They even installed special greenhouses called pineries with heating systems. A single pineapple was worth up to 80 pounds, which is about $15,000 today. Of course, people would hardly eat this expensive beauty, but send it as a gift or display on a dining table until it would rot. Folks who couldn't afford to buy a pineapple would sometimes rent one to show off wealth at a party. The king of fruits became a part of various designs and tableware for the rich. Stone pineapples on gateposts and the pineapple atop the Wimbledon trophy are living memories of that time. Around 1820, there were so many pineapples imported from abroad that they started losing their luxury status. 100 million years ago, there were giant crocodiles living in the Sahara Desert. In the 1990s, paleontologists found fossilized skeletons of primitive crocodiles, including the so-called supercroc. They discovered several partial skeletons from 110 million years ago. This prehistoric giant with a head as large as an adult human was about 40 feet long. That's about 2 times as tall as a giraffe. The croc thrived both in water and on land as part of a diverse ecosystem of ancient North Africa. The expeditions to the Sahara found a whole lost world of ancient crocodiles, with some species that resembled modern animals. One of them was the dog croc. With its tall legs and keen sense of smell, it moved through the surroundings, much like a dog. Another fascinating find was the duck croc, a 3-foot-long crocodile with duck-billed platypus-like features. It was adapted for life on land rather than water. And then there was also the rat croc, a small 2-foot-long crocodile. This species had front teeth, perfect for digging up insects. These prehistoric creatures were more agile, active, and probably more intelligent than today's crocs, who are passive hunters. If noise-canceling headphones had been invented in the 19th century, they would have come in really handy. On the 27th of August 1883, the island of Krakatoa in Indonesia experienced a catastrophic eruption. It produced what is believed to be the loudest sound ever recorded. As Krakatoa collapsed, it triggered tsunamis with waves reaching 151 feet that traveled as far as South Africa. Krakatoa was an uninhabited volcanic island that hadn't erupted for 2 centuries before this terrible day. The eruption took the lives of over 30,000 people and caused extreme fluctuations in air pressure, perceived as sound. A barometer at a gasworks 100 miles from Krakatoa recorded 172 decibels. An average human can withstand up to 130 decibels of sound without getting in serious trouble. This intense pressure ruptured the eardrums of sailors on the British ship Norham Castle, which was 40 miles away from Krakatoa. The sound wave from it circled the globe, and people could still hear it even 3,000 miles away where it resembled cannon fire. The late 1800s were a golden era for grand mustaches. But there was one problem. You couldn't enjoy a cup of tea with this kind of facial hairstyle. The heat from the tea would melt mustache wax and make the ends droop. Fine gentlemen had to struggle because of it until the invention of the mustache cup. Harvey Adams, a British potter, likely invented the mustache cup in the 1870s. He patented a butterfly-shaped ledge inside the cup with a hole to sip through. Thanks to it, the mustache didn't get wet. These cups quickly became a hit, first in the UK and then across Europe. In the United States, they were sold at stores like Sears and Marshall Field's, now part of Macy's. Mustache cups came in various shapes and sizes. Some, like farmers' cups, could hold up to a pint of tea. Others were smaller porcelain pieces shaped like conch shells or decorated with the owner's name. They often came with matching saucers. Lord Byron, one of the greatest British poets, kept numerous dogs and cats and a whole bunch of exotic animals. There was a monkey, a crocodile, a fox, peacocks, a bear, and several badgers. When Byron attended Trinity College, Cambridge, college rules prohibited keeping dogs on the grounds. He got really angry and decided to go around the rules. Byron brought a tame bear as his pet. The college authorities argued with him, but since the statutes did not specifically mention bears, they had no legal grounds to remove either the bear or its owner. Byron walked the bear on a chain, talked to it, and even considered applying for the bear to become a student at the college. We still don't know how and where Byron got the bear, but when he left Cambridge, he took the bear with him to his estate in London.
Hey there! Quick question. What is the capital of Japan? If you said Tokyo, then you got it right. Tokyo is one of the most modern and colorful cities in Japan. But for over 1,000 years, Kyoto occupied that place. Yeah, I know, the names are similar. But while Tokyo is the futuristic center of Japan, Kyoto is one of the most traditional and historical cities in Japan. It's known as Japan's cultural capital. Let's play a game of Spot the Difference. Here are 2 photos. The first one is from Tokyo, and the second one is from Kyoto. Can you tell what is the main difference between both? Hold that thought for one more second. Here are 2 more pictures. The first one is from Asakusa, a neighborhood in Tokyo, while the second one is from Kyoto. What would you say is the main difference here? Well, you can probably guess where I'm headed. If you didn't figure it out, I'll spell it out for you. The main difference is in the colors. If you've ever had a chance to travel around a bit, you probably noticed how cities have certain color themes. Like Rome is terracotta, and Paris varies in tones of gray and sepia. Looking at these images, one can see that Tokyo is bright, electric, and looks even a bit chaotic. And Kyoto is monochromatic and gives the impression of being calmer and more peaceful. It's fascinating to see that what causes this distinction between both cities has to do with a certain landscape law. You see, in 2007, Kyoto passed a new law prohibiting colorful street signs. The law also wanted to standardize overall constructions to make the city look more homogeneous. Since Kyoto was Japan's capital city for such an extended period of time, it was built using traditional feng shui architecture and principles. That's why so many of the buildings have that traditional Asian shape to them, the one with the curvy ceiling, like you see in the Mulan movie. Sure, this style is very far from what modern architects are doing today. If you take a look at Tokyo, you'd see glass skyscrapers rather than these old buildings. But that's all part of a bigger plan set in motion by something called the Miyako Landscape Guidelines. The municipality's main argument to pass the law was that Kyoto was losing its unique landscape due to Japan's modernization. If Kyoto were to follow in Japan's footsteps and build humongous skyscrapers, citizens would lose their view of the three mountains that surround the city. And let's face it, nobody would want that to happen. Plus, it's nice that you can go to different cities in Japan and notice that they are unique in their own way. If the landscape law was to be effective in all of Japan, we wouldn't get to see architectural marvels such as the Tokyo Sky Tree and the Asahi Flame Building. Now take a look at the Akihabara district in Tokyo. It is known as one of Japan's most modern neighborhoods. It's filled with top-notch technology at every corner. And yes, it's also filled with signs everywhere. If we compare it with Kyoto after the passing of the new law, the first thing that would have to go are the rooftop signs. Oh, and flashing and moving lights are also illegal there now. This Kyoto Starbucks also illustrates what I'm talking about. If you were strolling along the bucolic streets of Kyoto's countryside, searching for a place to get a cappuccino, you'd miss this coffee shop completely. I think we can agree that the traditional Starbucks logo was made to call attention, with that crowned siren-like creature supported by a very green background. In other places in Japan, it still looks like this. But in Kyoto, the brand went above and beyond to respect the new guidelines and produced this beautiful wooden logo and a little plaque that says this building has lattes. Yes, indeed. There are multiple examples like this. In Kyoto, the 7-Eleven doesn't have its traditional red, orange, and green stripes. Its logo was changed to black and white. You can think that's dull, but I think we can agree to disagree. It looks perfect when you look at its surroundings. Oh, and what about McDonald's, the world's most famous burger franchise? It kept its yellow logo, but took the red out of the background. In terms of the color palette allowed, the law uses the Munsell color system to determine which chroma levels are acceptable. Usually, the faded version of strong colors like red, black, green, and so on are accepted. Now, imagine if they adopted a Wes Anderson palette. It would look like a Toy City, that's for sure. At first, vendors and shopkeepers felt disturbed by the new law. They didn't understand why they had to change their branding for the sake of some aesthetic the city was trying to preserve. But with time, they not only came to terms with the new law, but could already see the benefits of it for their brand success. You see, this helped turn Kyoto into an even bigger tourist attraction. Tourists felt like they were traveling in time, sort of. Some tourists even like to dress up in traditional kimonos and walk around like geishas. The municipality also began an award system to compensate the shops and brands that had done their homework well. Of course, the camouflage Starbucks won an award back in 2018, as did Sagawa, a major delivery company in Japan, back in 2012. It's not only shops that needed to adjust to the new guidelines. Things such as vending machines and post offices also needed to be toned down. Again, the idea is to make the city more visually coherent, and they sure help. Now, what happens if you don't follow the rules? Well, the people who chose to ignore the landscape law can spend up to 1 year in jail or pay a huge fine. We can also compare the differences inside Kyoto itself. Around the city center, the landscape law is less strict, so you'll find taller buildings and even bigger and more colorful signs. But as you leave the center and move towards smaller cities in the countryside, the law is much more strict. It's especially strict around the UNESCO heritage sites. In case you're not aware, there are 17 heritage sites in Kyoto. Yep, that's a lot. But that's what makes Kyoto so unique. Now, welcome to the neighborhood of Pontulcho. This neighborhood is a good example of how the landscape law changed the city's mood over the years. Pontulcho is a cute alleyway in Kyoto that spans over several blocks. If you look at this Google Street image from 2009, And this one from 2023, you'll see clear differences. For starters, the huge sign at the entrance of the alleyway is gone. And so are the wires hanging from the tops of the shops. The pavement was redone and the big store signs disappeared. It's much cleaner. At night, the alleyway turned into the perfect spot for atmospheric dining, since its legislation decided to rule over the type of lighting allowed in the neighborhood. This is what it looks like at nighttime. Hey, you fancy grabbing some sushi? I can't help thinking that this landscape law contributed a lot to Japan's minimalist architecture. Although images like these ones in Tokyo are far from the idea we have of this minimalist aesthetic, Kyoto falls right into place with it. How about we take a quick look inside one of these establishments? The Starbucks we mentioned earlier also invested in turning its interior design local. It's the first ever Starbucks where you can drink tea on a tatami floor. You can sit cross-legged, like many Japanese people do, and enjoy a delicious hot beverage. I must say I quite like the new Kyoto. How about you?
Have you ever wondered how cool buildings of the future are going to look? Well, hold on tight because artificial intelligence is here to revolutionize the world of architecture. AI is a great sidekick. It can give the architects incredible new tools to create mind-blowing structures that are not only stunning, but also eco-friendly and super efficient. So let's check what our beautiful future might look like. First of all, you know how cities can get crazy busy and overwhelming, right? Well, guess what? AI is here to save the day and make our cities super smart. Imagine you're cruising down the road in your flying car. Yes, we'll have those. Thanks to AI, the traffic flows like a dream. No more endless gridlock. The city knows where the most likely crime spots are and takes proactive steps to keep us safe. It's like having superheroes on every corner. And hey, forget about trash piling up. AI makes sure waste is managed efficiently, keeping our city clean and fresh. They can act as a city manager who can optimize everything from traffic to safety and even waste disposal. They can analyze tons of data from all sorts of places like sensors and social media. With all that information, they can help city planners make brilliant decisions that make our lives better. Okay, so you stroll down the street, and your eyes are instantly captivated by an extraordinary building. Its futuristic curves and features make it stand out from the rest. And it not only catches your eye, but also gives Mother Nature a high five. You might think it was designed by a genius architect, but little do you know it was actually a collaboration between humans and artificial intelligence. Imagine having a super smart design buddy who can whip up thousands of incredible building ideas in a blink of an eye. That's what AI-assisted design software does for architects. It can generate and assess a ton of design options. They take into account stuff like the best materials to use and the perfect placement for the building. Also, by analyzing data and crunching numbers, algorithms can help optimize the building's design. They can ensure it minimizes energy usage, conserves water, and manages waste like a pro. Every building strives to reduce costs, save energy, and promote a better world. The result? Architectural masterpieces that are both jaw-droppingly beautiful and super practical. The cityscape of the future will be dotted with these awe-inspiring structures. Oh, but that wasn't impressive enough for you? Well, how about a stunning, futuristic building that seems to defy gravity? It's not made of traditional bricks and mortar, oh no. This marvel was created using the powers of 3D printing. With the help of AI, architects designed every intricate detail and fed all the important data, like what materials to use and how the site conditions might affect the structure. AI algorithms worked their magic to optimize the design, making it both breathtakingly beautiful and rock solid. 3D printing is basically like having a magical machine that can create awesome structures straight out of a sci-fi movie, and AI jumps in to make sure these structures are not just pretty, but also strong. In the city of the future, 3D printing will become the ultimate architect's tool. It will allow them to create structures that were once impossible to build. From mind-bending shapes to intricate details, the possibilities are endless. But AI isn't just making buildings look great, it also makes them efficient and cozy. Let's say you step into a futuristic office building, and voila! The lights automatically adjust to match your mood, and the temperature is set perfectly for you. These futuristic buildings are capable of sensing and responding to their surroundings, just like you do. They control the lighting, keeping it just right for the time of day. They manage the temperature, so it's always cozy and comfortable. They even keep a watchful eye on security and fix small issues before they become big headaches. So, the smart building knows when people come and go, so it optimizes energy usage accordingly, saving the planet and some cash along the way. Now the cool thing is, all these aren't the only possibilities. How about turning skyscrapers into a vertical forest? Recently, an architect from India got super excited about the power of artificial intelligence. So, he decided to team up with an image bot called Midjourney to create a vision for the future. But instead of a dull, robotic world, they aimed for something spectacular. With text prompts like utopian technology and futuristic towers, the architect and AI got to work. Guess what? Midjourney didn't disappoint. It conjured up a world where buildings were covered in lush vertical forests and adorned with shapes inspired by nature. They wanted to create a sustainable future that harmonized with the environment. The architect, Manas Bhatia, is super positive about AI's potential. He doesn't see it as a threat to his job, but as a powerful tool for positive change. He envisions a future where architects and AI collaborate to make breathtaking designs. In his project, Bhatia even asked the AI to imagine symbiotic and hollowed structures, and it responded with pictures of apartments nestled within hollowed-out trees. Imagine a world where the building itself becomes a living, breathing part of nature. Well, Bhatia believes that nature should play a big role in architecture. He loves designing structures that embrace nature's beauty and functionality. From buildings built around trees to facades that regulate temperature, he's all about blending architecture with the natural world. With architects like Bhatia and the superpowers of AI, the future of cities is going to be amazing. So get ready to step into a world where nature and technology coexist in perfect harmony. It's a dream we can't wait to see come true. Or, if you're not a big fan of trees, how about this? Skyscrapers that aren't made of solid bricks, but instead, they're inflatable wonders. Zumo, an architectural practice in Barcelona, used the magic of AI to bring these wobbly structures to life. These inflatable superstructures rise above future cities like illuminated balloons in the sky. Here's the best part. These inflatable buildings have sustainability superpowers. You can pump them up to towering heights, flatten them for easy transportation, and rebuild them wherever they're needed. Plus, they're powered by renewable energy, reducing their impact on the environment. Pretty cool, right? Phew. The future is zooming toward us like a rocket. Artificial intelligence can become the secret sauce that makes architects' work extra special. But hey, with great power comes great responsibility. We need to use AI wisely and ethically. For now, we don't have to worry about machines replacing architects. Artificial intelligence still needs a human hand, or else we might end up with buildings that look like mashed up bananas or ice cream cones, unless that's your thing. In addition, humans have one important advantage. They, well, are humans. We need to keep in mind that artificial intelligence doesn't have emotional intelligence. It's a brainy genius, but it can't fully understand the feelings and vibes we humans crave in our spaces. So, we must remember to infuse our designs with that human touch, those warm and fuzzy elements that make us go, "Ah, I feel right at home." And let's not forget that AI is still learning. It's basically just taking its first steps, and we need to be patient and give it time to grow. Rushing things too quickly could lead to wonky designs or buildings that look like a jumbled puzzle. This might look cool if you like avant-garde architecture, but for regular folk, no thanks. So, as the future unfolds at warp speed, let's embrace the wonders of AI in architecture. But let's also remember to balance its brilliance with our own human touch. Together, we can create a future where buildings are not just functional, but also filled with heart and soul. It's an adventure that's out of this world.
Is the Big Apple getting a little too heavy for its own good? A recent study revealed that New York City is sinking. And get this, it's all because of those towering skyscrapers. Apparently, the whole event is called subsidence, which is when the Earth's surface settles bit by bit, or suddenly sinks. Soft sediments shifting and the weight of the city itself are the culprits behind this sinking sensation. Now, don't get too alarmed. The study found that New York is sinking at a rate of 0.04 to 0.07 inches per year. Sure, that doesn't sound like much, but there are parts of the city that are sinking even faster than that. This sinking situation could cause some trouble for the city, especially since it's already pretty low-lying and home to over 8 million people. So it's important that local authorities come up with some strategies to tackle the growing flood risk and rising sea levels. Although I'm not sure building giant seawalls is the way to go. We might need to get a little more creative than that. Geologists want to make sure we're all aware that building more high-rises near the coast, rivers, or lakes could contribute to future flood risks. So we really need to think twice before we start constructing skyscrapers left and right. In recent studies, scientists calculated the total mass of all the buildings in New York City, over 1 million of them, and it adds up to a whopping 1.68 trillion pounds. Talk about a heavy load. Now, they didn't include the weight of the roads, sidewalks, bridges, and other paved areas, so you can only imagine how much more weight is added to the city. But hey, even with these limitations, the researchers did a pretty good job of accounting for the complex geology beneath New York, including the sand, silt, clay deposits, and good old bedrock. They found out that certain types of soil, like clay and artificial fill, are more prone to subsidence. On the other hand, bedrock stays pretty firm and keeps those skyscrapers in place. So at least we don't have to worry about the Empire State Building taking a dive anytime soon. Comparing their fancy models with satellite data, the researchers created a map of the city showing where the sinking is happening. And guess what? The increased urbanization and all that groundwater pumping and draining are only making things worse. It's high time we start protecting our resources, don't you think? I wouldn't start packing my bags just yet. New York isn't the only sinking city out there, you know. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is facing some serious sinking action too. In fact, parts of it could be underwater by 2050. That's like a real-life Atlantis situation. Over 30 million people in Jakarta are now deciding if they should relocate the entire city. If there's a city out there we should worry about sinking, that's Venice for sure. But why is it so eager to take a dive, you might ask? Well, let me tell you the complex truth. You see, Venice decided to set up shop on a marshy lagoon with shoddy foundations. As time went by, the ground underneath just couldn't hold it together and started compacting like a squished marshmallow. On top of that, the city's been slurping up groundwater like it's going out of style or something. The cherry on top of this mushy cake is that the sea levels have also been slowly rising. And guess what? Those sneaky plate tectonics are having a laugh by shoving the Adriatic plate under the Apennine Mountains, giving Venice an extra push downward. Someone had the bright idea to stop pumping groundwater, thinking they could stop the sinking shenanigans. But hold your gondolas. A new study revealed that the sinking hasn't completely stopped, just slowed down a bit. It turns out the whole area is tilting ever so slightly to the east, with Venice perched on the slightly higher end. You must be wondering how much Venice sinks in a year, right? Brace yourself for this shocking revelation. It's sinking at a rate of about 0.04 to 0.07 inches a year, similar to New York. At this pace, in the next 20 years, it could sink a whopping 3 inches below sea level. To avoid turning into a Venetian fishbowl, locals are frantically building special barriers to keep the water from crashing into the lagoon. But don't hold your breath, because this project has had more delays than you'd expect. Oh, and have you noticed that charming old-style vibe in Venice? It's not just because they're fans of the vintage look. Those salty waters have been wreaking havoc on the buildings, thanks to the water levels constantly breaching the original damp proofing. Now the water's cozying up to the masonry, and the ground floors of many apartments are no longer safe enough to live in. Now, when will Venice take a dive into the abyss? It's hard to say for sure. Subsidence and rising sea levels are as slow and unpredictable as a turtle in a marathon. But experts have playfully warned that if things continue as they are, Venice could be doing the backstroke beneath the waves by 2100. Fear not, though. They're doing their best to protect this floating gem of history and culture from becoming a Hollywood disaster flick. So don't cancel that Venice day trip just yet. New Orleans has a peculiar watery situation going on too. You see, this lively place was initially built just a smidge above sea level, and now it's gradually sinking. Back in the day, when an area of the city called the French Quarter was just popping up, folks had to make do with what they had. They scored the best land they could find, but it was only about 10 feet above sea level. And let's not forget, the rest of the city is as flat as a pancake, with the areas around the French Quarter being just a hair lower. Now, even though they knew they were up against some soggy odds, the resourceful New Orleans residents did their best to elevate their houses above the flood-prone land they chose as their home. There's more. The ground beneath New Orleans is as wobbly as a plate of Jell-O. Architects had to keep things short and sweet because they feared the soil couldn't handle the weight of taller structures. They played it safe, sticking to 2 or 2.5 stories. Here's where it gets interesting. The city installed a fancy drainage system in the 1900s, thinking it would solve their water woes. And while it did help with the marshes and all, it inadvertently sucked the life out of the soil. Yep, the ground was left high and dry, without enough sediment and water to keep it steady. As a result, those former marshes sank as if they were in a quicksand competition. By the 1930s, things got even more topsy-turvy. 1/3 of the city was below sea level, and by the time Hurricane Katrina made its grand entrance, that number skyrocketed to around 50%. Oh, and here's the icing on the cake. Sea levels decided to join the party, rising faster than a helium balloon. So now, not only is New Orleans sinking, but the surrounding area is also at various degrees below sea level. So what can we do about all these sinking cities? Well, for instance, we could manage our water consumption a bit better. We can't just keep sucking groundwater out of the earth like there's no tomorrow. We've got to find new ways to quench our urban centers' thirst. Think about it. We could purify surface waters, or even turn salty seawater into a sweet solution. Of course, we'll need a boatload of energy to make it all work. Speaking of great urban water management, let me tell you about a town in Denmark called Nye. These guys have got it all figured out. They collect rainwater and use it to supply their toilets and washing machines. Talk about resourcefulness. Now that's what I call a splash of genius.
It's 10 p.m. You suddenly feel hungry and go to the fridge, but there's nothing inside. You decide to hop to the nearest supermarket. There you find the snack you want and pay by card. On the way home, you wonder, was it this easy to get food in the city a century ago? One of the streetlights flickers and goes out. You are now in the dark. Feeling scared? Now you know how people felt after sundown in the pre-electricity era. We are so used to power that we forget that it isn't even a century old. In 1925, only half of all US homes had electricity. Without it, nothing would be possible today. The light in your room, the refrigerator, store signs, and credit card. They all need electricity to run. So, how did people live without it? Did our cities lie in complete darkness? Not quite. The history of illuminating our homes and streets is thousands of years old. Recently, 2022, archaeologists discovered the oldest intact oil lamp. They estimated it was 2,300 years old. There is evidence of workshops that produced these lamps on a massive scale. Italian scientists have discovered similar lamps in Modena. This city was the center of oil lamp production in the Roman Empire. The workshops were so widespread that they even had different brands: Fortis, Faetas By, and Strobili. Some brands were in high demand, so other manufacturers copied their makers' marks. And you thought that fakes were a modern problem. These oil lamps were simple in design. High-end lamps were made from bronze and other metals, but the most common material was clay. People would pour oil through the central hole and then burn a wick inside the nozzle area. The wick was mostly linen. But oil lamps were small in size and were used indoors. There was no way to light a whole street with them. The alternative was, you've guessed it, candles. Humans still use candles today. Your grandma probably has a candle and a box of matches hidden in a drawer somewhere, just in case of a power outage. Humans have been making candles for 5,000 years. When you think of a candle, you think of beeswax. But the range of candle materials is pretty wide. In the Middle Ages, only the rich could afford beeswax candles. The rest of the population had to be happy with tallow. By modern standards, candles have terrible energy efficiency. Do you remember the time when you first saw a candle and tried to touch it? Ouch! You never got that idea again, did you? Candles use a lot of energy to generate heat. That's why they are far from ideal light sources. And the light they emit is not the kind we need. It's infrared. Humans cannot see this sort of light. The numbers are staggering. Only 1% of candlelight is visible to us humans. Modern light bulbs are way more efficient. They shine 80 times brighter than candles. In such dim conditions, our ancestors had to be imaginative. For instance, they covered artwork with a thin layer of gold. This technique was called gold leaf. Artists didn't do this to make their artwork look luxurious. They wanted their paintings to glow in the candlelight. And they had another ally in the struggle against darkness: natural light. Have you ever wondered why old churches have tall, elongated windows? Their main function was to let sunlight inside. After all, these structures were huge. There was no other way to illuminate them. Just take Notre Dame, Paris, France, as an example. It covers an area 4 times as large as a hockey rink. And the building was 211 feet high. That's about half as tall as the Great Pyramid of Giza, so it made sense to build large windows. In homes, mirrors had the same effect as windows. They would reflect natural light around the house. Before electricity, our homes were packed with mirrors. And how many do we have today? One in the bathroom and maybe one in the hallway. That's because we no longer need them to reflect light. All those mirrors have been replaced with a simple flip of a light switch. Today, interior designers advise people to remove mirrors from their bedrooms for better sleep. Talk about a plot twist. But what about buildings that people visited at nighttime, such as theaters and opera houses? The solution was surprisingly low-tech. Candles. Like, thousands of them. Builders mounted them on large chandeliers. But there was a problem. All those candles created heat and would burn for an hour or so max. Playwrights and composers had to add pauses, so staff would have time to replace the candles. Have you ever shattered a light bulb by accident? Not a pleasant experience, but luckily, you can clean the glass with a broom in seconds. Before electricity, such clumsiness cost people their lives. Knocking over a candle could start a major fire. And there was another danger. Ladies wore long dresses that presented a fire hazard. Our ancestors were literally playing with fire. And this is all indoors. Outside the house, you would have to carry a flaming torch, or hope that the sky wasn't cloudy, so you could navigate by moonlight. And one smart American decided not to go out at night at all. Benjamin Franklin went to bed at 10 p.m. and got up at 5 a.m. But over in London, going out at night created a new business. Link boys carried torches for Victorians. These youngsters would wait outside inns for patrons to come out after dark and offer their services. And they did their job in times of thick fog as well. That's the English weather for you. Before electricity, it was dangerous to go outside after sundown. But this was about to change in 1807. That's when a German engineer, Frederick Windsor, lit a street in London using gas lamps. It was finally becoming possible to go out at night and feel safe. Now these gas lamps weren't easy to operate. At dusk, a lamplighter had to carry a torch to turn them on, so to say. And then, at dawn, they had to do another round to put out the flames. That sounds like some good cardio. And it was. During their entire career, a lamplighter could easily walk 150,000 miles in total. And then came electricity. In the 1870s, Thomas Edison was the first to produce commercial light bulbs. A city in the west of Romania, Timisoara, became the first place in Europe to have electric streetlights. Half of the homes in Britain had electric power by the end of the 1930s. The age of electricity had begun, but there was still room for improvement. At the time, the most common type of light bulb was incandescent. This means that the light bulb has a filament inside that produces light when heated by electric power. This type of bulb is similar to a candle. It produces heat rather than light, and the ratio will stun you. 95% of the electricity that flows through the light bulb is converted into heat. Yes, you've heard it right. Only 5% of energy is used for creating actual light. Despite this, electric power has changed the way we live. In the year 1800, only 2% of the world's population lived in cities. And there is a good reason for this. Cities were dark places, illuminated only by candles and oil lamps. There was no street lighting. After electricity became a thing, the numbers turned. According to the World Bank, more than half of the world's population, 56%, lives in cities today. And our urban settlements look a lot different than they did just a century and a half ago. They now shine bright on satellite images. From space, Las Vegas is the city that shines the brightest at night. But the story of illumination is far from over. In 2006, Ann Arbor, Michigan, US, became the first metropolitan area to use LED for street lighting. It is short for light-emitting diodes. This new type of lighting uses at least 75% less energy than the light bulb perfected by Edison in the 1800s. And they last longer too, up to 25 times.